We were this close to biscuits.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, where we're coming at you right after Carolina dispenses with Campbell. It is Sunday, December 29th, 2024. Welcome in. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Big welcome into the everydayers who are with us, all the Locked On Tar Heels insiders, and that Locked On Tar Heels Discord family. So glad everyone's here. Let's get right into it because I know it's late on a Sunday night. It's almost 2025 for crying out loud. That's crazy. How are we there already? Carolina, 97-81 victors tonight over the Campbell Fighting Camels. Man, just shy of biscuits. You could hear it if you're watching the broadcast. The entire Dean Dome wanted Carolina to take at least one attempt at three on that final possession, but Coach Davis was calling off the Dogs. Carolina closes out both 2024 and non-conference play with a fine win. You know, it's Campbell. You're just getting some reps in. Really, Tar Heels now 8-5. That's 8-5 overall, 1-0 in ACC play, and now it's just ACC games the rest of the way, starting with Louisville on Wednesday, New Year's Day. That's crazy. All right. Let's get right into it. Here's what happens if you are just joining us for the first time on one of these postcasts. We just quick takeaways, like off the cuff, haven't gotten into all the stats and data yet. We're going to do a lot of that in real time together. So a lot of it's reacting. And then tomorrow's full Monday show is where we will, have had more time to decompress and think through and process and all that. If you're watching with us in real time on YouTube, welcome in. So glad you're here. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening back later, welcome in. We're glad you're here as well. All right. Nowhere else. Well, there's actually a lot of places we could start now that I say that, but I want to start with Ian Jackson, who sets another career high for Ian. Back-to-back 20-point games. Got 26 points in this one after having 24 against UCLA. I loved it because that last bucket, those 20 points, 25 and 26, were a beautifully placed alley-oop from Elliot Cadeau as Ian just found his way on the backside of the defense. And Elliot was over like by the coach's box in front of the Carolina. I mean, it was awesome. And so hopefully, I know some people in the chat have already said, like, I was in the Dean Dome and it was rocking. And I know that moment was very special as well. For Ian now, he's got 20 or more points in 3 of his last 6 games. Obviously, we'll talk about it in a minute, but inserted into the starting lineup for the first time in his career in this game. And it was a slowish start for him. Like, Carolina was pretty hot from the field early. They made 6 of their first 7 baskets, if I remember correctly, and then missed like their next 2. And each of those 3 missed baskets were all from Ian. But then he just started look, he is a superior athlete in a high major college basketball game, much more so against Campbell, and just really started to show it off. I think ultimately realized I can get to the rim at will. I mean, he's so smooth. And Drake too, man. They're just so smooth in their athleticism. Great stuff for Ian to just see him keep coming, keep stacking great performances. I don't care who the opponent is. Just seeing freshmen making gains and advances game after game is critically important. But let's also talk about somebody else who scored more than 20 points in this game, and that was RJ Davis. Same thing. I don't care who the opponent is. To see RJ have a game where he was over 50% from the field, where he was 50% from 3, it was just like a sweet salve on a wound. You know, it was good for my soul. I don't know how it felt for you. Obviously, the big news for RJ in this game is that finally he ties Marcus Paige and then breaks Marcus Paige's all-time UNC three-point record. The record was 299, meaning no Tar Heel had ever gotten to 300 career threes, and RJ has now done it. In fact, made 5 threes in this game, so he's up to 303. That was a season high for him. The most threes he had in the game so far this season was 4. By the way, if you're interested, his career high in a game is 7. Didn't quite get there, but what a relief to see this from RJ. Is it the thing that gets him going? It's hard to know, right? Like, it looked smooth at times. He started 3 of 3 from 3, but then he missed his next 4. And then he hit his 4th one was what put Carolina up by 20 for the first time in this game. And, just was going, and he looked in the flow, and it was incredible. But what I love about what RJ is doing this season is that even though his scoring hasn't been as efficient as it typically is in his career, here's the things he has been doing. In addition to his scoring and his efficient shooting, he had 4 rebounds, he had 5 assists, and 2 turnovers. Like, the RJ finding other ways to help this team, even when his shot's not falling, is just big time. It's so great for him, and I'm so happy to see it. Now, in the same way that this might have been a breakout for RJ, we'll find out more about that as things wear on. Could the same be true for Elliot Cadeau? We all know the truth. Elliot has been a little bit on the struggle bus lately. It's something we just got to be aware of, right? It's true, and it's the honest response to this. Turnovers in the last however minute. Let's go all the way back to the Dayton game to kick off Maui, game 5 of the season for Carolina. Elliot's turnovers in that time: 6-2, 4-4, 7-1, 4-5. It's not good, and assists have fallen off in that span I guess I wouldn't say fallen off, because they've been, he's had at least that going back that same distance, at least 3 assists in every one of those games. But because the turnovers have come up, the assist to turnover ratio has been off until tonight. My man EC, 12 assists, a career high for him, and just 3 turnovers in this game. That's a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Remember, in those first 4 games of the season, Elliot was like averaging whatever it was. But, as I said, in post immediate reactions, we don't have all the numbers right handy. But, man, phenomenal for Elliot to get back going in this game and have a positive assist to turnover ratio and a career high in assists. And so many of them were absolutely beautiful. Just great assists from Elliot. But also what I loved about what he did tonight was he was in attack mode. 6 of 11 from the field. 9 of those were 2s. He did take 2 threes. It's that thing we want to see Elliot hitting from 3. We need to see Elliot hitting, or at least taking confident threes. Didn't. But what he was able to do kind of at will in this game was get to the rim and finish. There was one that he threw up. I'm pretty convinced he was just getting it up on the rim. Knew he wasn't going to make it, but Jalen Washington had great inside position, got the offensive rebound, and put it back. I'm almost positive. It was almost like more of a pass. Just wanted to get it up on the rim, and let Jalen Washington get that rebound. So really, really good stuff from Elliot, who also contributed 3 rebounds and a steal in this game. So to see Elliot thrive, both in terms of distribution and taking care of the ball, and in calling his own number at times to get in and finish at the rim, I thought was really important for North Carolina to be able to have tonight. And so I was so glad to see all of that. Speaking of, let's stay in that similar vein with Elliot. One of the things I've talked a lot about in the past week or so, Mark Campbell and I talked about it in the UCLA postgame reaction show, is all the turnovers Carolina has had recently, right? Like it's just been too much. You might remember that in the UCLA game, not a single Tar Heel had a positive assist to turnover ratio. Most people were negative, and there were like 1 or 2 who were even. And as a team, Carolina had a negative assist to turnover ratio in this game. Just 7 turnovers, 4 in the first half, 3 in the second half. Let's just attribute them out. 3 to Elliot, 2 to RJ. That makes sense. They're the guys that have the ball in their hands the most. And then 1 for Jalen Washington and 1 to team. I don't even remember what the situation was that led to that, but you can very much live with that. And part of the reason for that is if you go look at Carolina's turnover stats for this season, In the first 4 games, they were at 6, 9, 9, and 5. In the 8 games since, the Tar Heels have had double-digit turnovers in every one of those games. So again, regardless of opponent, and Campbell's a pretty strong defensive opponent, to break the streak of double-digit turnovers that was at 8 games is, I thought, really, really critical. And again, so much of it is because of Elliot doing an infinitely better job taking care of the ball. There were, for the turnovers that Carolina did have, I believe the majority, if not all of them, were unforced. Like there was just like RJ passed it to a ghost in the corner one time. There was a couple of those kind of plays, but okay, fine. And then as a team for North Carolina in this game, 20 assists to those 7 turnovers. I mean, my good, again, I know it's Campbell. I hear that. Like I know so many of you are like, who look at the opponent, of course. That doesn't necessarily always mean that. And so for Carolina to be able to do that, and oh, by the way, 20 assists on 36 made baskets. Anytime you're over 50% in assist percentage, you're feeling good. Let's figure out what that actual assist percentage was. 20 divided by 36, 55.6%. Yeah, that's great for Carolina's assist percentage in this game. All right, guys, you know that we've got a lot more to talk about, and we're going to get to all of that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Rocket Mortgage. Have you used their subscription app called Rocket Money to help find subscriptions that maybe you forgot about, or maybe you were paying for twice? That definitely is happening to people I know of, man. Having subscriptions they didn't even realize they were paying for it, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track those down. It's almost like having a personal assistant for your finances. What Rocket Money does is it's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your subscriptions, but it also monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so that you can work at growing your savings, bringing everything together in one place, one-stop shopping. And whether that's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit as we get into 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. As we get back into it, folks, we're going to go ahead and pull up the box score. As always, if you are watching or listening to this later, you can pull it up and look back at it with us. And coming up here in just a little bit, by the way, we're going to get to your questions and observations in the chat. So make sure you're dropping those in if there's part of the game or some big picture thing that you want to talk about. Where we want to go next, even though we're now in segment 2, is all the way back to the beginning. I had heard rumblings on Saturday that Ian Jackson was going to be inserted into the starting lineup for this game. My assumption at that point was that it was probably going to be for Drake Powell. Maybe, but probably not Seth Trimble. And then we'd see whatever else. Well, unfortunately, we learned, about 30, 45 minutes before tip-off, that Seth, and this is always the language now, there's always a lack of specificity, was just basically per Carolina, Seth Trimble is out tonight with an upper body injury. Obviously, because we do these live reaction postcasts immediately after the game, I haven't had a chance yet to listen to Coach Davis's press conference to see if he unpacks that more, to talk about how major or minor it was or what the issue is going on specifically with Seth. But hopefully it's no big deal, and it's like, if it was an ACC game, he would have played, but it's Campbell, so we kept him out. Hopefully it's more of that kind of scenario, because let's remember back to Carolina had that little bit of a skid mid-ACC play last year, and there are multiple of those games we can point to as saying, if Seth Trimble had played that game, North Carolina wins it. And so you do not want to get into a situation where you are without arguably your best individual defender, arguably your most athletic player, with, the other person in that conversation being Drake Powell, who again, just glides, man. I love watching Drake play. It's so great. Who had a couple rainmaker threes in this game. Great stuff from him. Anyway, so Seth Trimble out with an upper body injury in this game. And so Ian Jackson is inserted. And so the starting 5 were basically The two guys that have now started every game this season, which is Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis, along with Seth out, Ian basically taking his place. Drake Powell has been in the starting lineup now for quite a while, going back to the Alabama game, if I remember correctly. And then it had been since the Georgia Tech game, Van Allen Lubin starting at the 5. Interestingly enough, Jalen Washington is reinserted into the starting 5 for this game. So your starting 5, Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson, Drake Powell, and Jalen Washington. That one was kind of interesting for me. Jalen over Van Allen Lubin. I think part of it is that this is one of the few games this season where Carolina had a front court height advantage, and so maybe wanting to take advantage of that. Interestingly, Carolina did so early in each half. Jalen Washington scored the first bucket of both halves for the Tar Heels. But as has been usual this season, the Tar Heels didn't really look for him or other front court players throughout the rest of the game. There were moments where, like more pick and roll action, right? Like he had 2 different dunks off of pick and roll action right in front of Carolina's bench with Elliott, that first bucket of the second half, and then basically the exact same set and roll action like 2 possessions later for Jalen Washington. And so that is my guess as to why you roll with that. Or maybe it's just like, hey, look, we've had Van Allen in the starting lineup for the last several games, and it really hasn't had the effect or impact that we hoped it would be. Perhaps so. Now, here's my other question is, let's say Seth was not hurt. So let's say Seth played in this game against Campbell. Would Ian Jackson still have started based on what we've been seeing from him? And if so, who for? Would it have still been Seth? Would it have been Drake Powell, Elliot Cadeau? We just don't know. I mean, obviously, Coach Davis could tell us that, but even that would be hypothetical because Seth was hurt, right? So it's hard to truly know. So we'll find out once Seth is back in the lineup what the case is there. Does Ian stay in the starting lineup? Or does he just continue to play starters minutes? Because that's what he's been doing. Those of you watching on YouTube can see the minutes played in this game. Ian had a game high 36 minutes. I think that might be the first time he's had the team high in minutes. Really interesting there. And so that's really interesting to see. And it kind of carries on, speaking of minutes, the way it's been going this season. Ian, who's playing the Seth role in this game, RJ Davis, have Seth and RJ are typically the minutes leaders in each game. So in this one, it's Ian and RJ, followed by Elliot with 34 minutes, Drake Powell with 30. And then basically each of the front court guys is somewhere in the teens. You had, even though Jalen Washington played 14 minutes. And I say even though, because Cade Tyson had the 5th most minutes in this game with 18. And then both Ty Claude and Jalen Withers played 10. Interesting that I thought Jay Witt would have played more minutes in this game than he did. Curious to see what his role is going forward there. So that was your starting lineup and where things were at with that. It was just really curious to see what happened. And I'm curious to see what happens going forward. Does Coach Davis stick with Ian Jackson? Because clearly it paid off. But also, he had just set a career high coming off the bench and playing the 2nd most minutes on the team. So ultimately, he's going to get in the game quickly and stay in the game a lot. Does it ultimately really matter? I don't know that it does. North Carolina in this game had a great scoring balance. Yes, you had Ian and RJ both in the 20s, Ian at 26, RJ at 23. But also to supplement that, before the walk-ons came in the final 30 seconds of the game, which was Russell Hawkins came in, John Holbrook came in, Dante Mayo Jr. came in. The other 10 Tar Heels that played, the kind of the main rotation guys, and even James Brown, I guess we would include him tonight, all 10 of them scored at least 2 points, and all 5 starters scored in double digits. In addition to Ian's 26, RJ's 23, you had Elliot Cadeau and Drake Powell both with 12, and you had Jalen Washington contributing 10 on a super efficient 5 of 7 from the field. In fact, I just realized this in real time. All 5 starters were over 50% from the game from the floor. Elliot, 6 of 11. RJ, 7 of 13. Drake, 4 of 5. Ian, 9 of 16. And Jalen Washington, 5 of 7. So Carolina has and it makes sense because as a team, Carolina shot 57% for the game, but all 5 starters, in fact, only Cade Tyson and Jalen Withers were under 50% for the game. Whew, good stuff there from the Tar Heels. Now, similarly, we've often talked about how Carolina this year has to rebound by committee. For the game, Campbell had 25 rebounds to Carolina's 37, so the Tar Heels are plus 12 on the glass. But speaking of rebounding committee, very similar to what we said about scoring, all 10 Tar Heels that played before the walk-ons came in had at least 1 rebound. The leading rebounder in this game, Jalen Withers. Remember, I said he only played 10 minutes, and he was Carolina's leading rebounder with 7 for the game. Going back to the starters who all scored in double digits, they also all had at least 3 rebounds. And so you've seen everyone digging in and doing what they need to do, doing their part to do so. Now, one of the big conversations this year has been about Carolina's shooting or their inability to shoot from 3. Because the thing is, if Carolina is going to be a team, because Carolina is a team that doesn't have a dynamic front court player that you can count on to just dump the ball into, part of why RJ Davis gets all the attention he does and why he's not been as efficient as we're used to seeing from him. Carolina is like, they have to have threes or they have to be able to get out and run. They've got to be able to share the ball well in half court, which they've just quite frankly not done all that well at. Transition game has been great, but funny enough, they didn't utilize it a lot in this game, just 7 fast break points. And maybe that's actually encouraging, right? In a game where Carolina scored 97, only 7 of them were fast breaks. Let me see if I can get to my data charts really quick, which is a good moment to plug the Locked On Tar Heels Insider program, where you have access to all of my stats and charts and data all the time. Yes, this is the first game all season that Carolina did not get to double-digit fast break points. In fact, not only that, their season low prior to tonight was 14 and just 7 fast break points. But I think that could be an encouraging thing. Here's what I mean by that. Carolina was able to score more in the half court is the basic takeaway as you look at that, right? Like if it's not fast break, it's in half court. And so I at some level am very encouraged to see Carolina. Oh my word, points per possession. Carolina was 1.426. Crazy stuff there. So that's good. But what I was wanting to get to is Carolina had a kind of crazy scoring or shooting discrepancy in the first half. It got much better in the second, but this is kind of the microcosm with what we were talking about Carolina's inability from beyond the arc. In the first half, Carolina shot really well in totality. Their first half field goals were 16 of 31. That's 51.6%. But, a big but here, just 4 of 17 from 3. That's just shy of 25%. That's 23.5, which means that from 2 in the first half, Carolina was 12 of 14. So figure out how to do more of that, which I know you don't have a big guy to just dump it into, but move the ball, get guys going, and get to the rim. Because clearly Carolina was shooting well. And I know it's not all just right at the rim. I know some of it's not. And thankfully, things got much better in the second half shooting from 3. 6 of 11, Carolina was 54% and 62.5% overall. So that is really encouraging. But see those numbers and just know what they're saying. And, we'll talk defense. I thought for the most part, Carolina played well. The second half was just kind of like, there was no defense either way late. They're just kind of playing an NBA All-Star game. Both teams scored over 50 points in the second half. I'm not really putting much of any stock into that, if I'm being honest. So just take that. I know it's like, man, it should have been bigger than a 16-point lead. And it was 20 to 25 points the majority of the second half. And that's what this game really was. So don't let that final score freak you out in any way. Speaking of, I wonder about points in the paint. Yeah, Carolina led that 48-30. That's what I would have guessed based on how often and easily Carolina was able to get to the rim. All right, we do have, even though it's late, we've still got a good number of comments and questions. I want to get over to that and see what all kind of stuff you guys are wondering about and seeing what all we can attack there. We'll get to that in just a second. Yeah, lots of people actually saying exactly what I had just said. Little effort on defense the last 10 minutes. And that was both teams just kind of like, oh, okay, this game is whatever. Our friend the Nintendo, what's up, Nintendo? Says Elliot and RJ looking comfortable in the same game was big. Need more of it going forward. Yeah, I love that point from Nintendo. Obviously, we talked earlier individually about how both Elliot and RJ had two of their better games this season, if we're being honest. Again, I don't care about opponent when we're having this conversation. One of the things we've been saying is, can we get to a moment this season where Carolina collectively as a team is shooting well or playing well or distributing well or whatever it is? And to see those two main backcourt guys do that, and in a game where they kind of needed to because Seth is on the bench, I thought that was really important. So that's a great point from the Nintendo nerd getting after it there. Lots of people saying, our friend T-Man says, my first ever game at the Smith Center. Yes, I had been talking about that in the Discord, by the way. If you haven't joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, links in the show notes, free to join, love to have you. Unbelievable experience, loved every second of it. Go Heels. And that's the thing, man. Like, yeah, I know it's Campbell. I know it's a Sunday night in between Christmas and New Year's, but historically, this is a game that people love going to at the Smith Center. It's typically like a Saturday afternoon game instead of Sunday night, but whatever, they flexed it, ACC Network, whatever. And so I love T-Man was able to get there. Cameron Chestnut earlier in the chat said, I had courtside seats. Dean Dome was rocking. And I love that, man. It's a Sunday night, 8:00, and everyone's there making it happen, even with the students out of town. And so that's really important. And that's great. Yeah. Nintendo comes, but we were talking about the just apathetic defense from both teams. Nintendo said Campbell made some stupid threes and they haven't been a good shooting team all season long. Dean Dome woes. Yeah. I mean, hashtag Dean Dome on that, right? But again, they're just putting them up. Carolina, I know there's a thing of like, we should be more locked in there, whatever. We'll take it and we move on. Richard Holmes. Yeah, I wanted to get to this. Thankful for this win. Moving forward, better 3-point defense. Yes, need to see that. And here's one of the things. And Cade, we need you. Cade Tyson in this game. 3 points on 1 of 5 shooting, 0 of 4 from 3, 1 of 2 at the free throw line. Did have 3 rebounds and not really anything else in 18 minutes. Cade had some good hustle plays on defense, keeping balls alive. His one bucket was a nice find, I think, from Drake. Drake was in the corner opposite Carolina's bench. Cade on the baseline. Yes, that's how that played out. And Cade had some wide open looks from 3. They were good looks. Man, the looks were good. The shots were not. I had an air ball. I don't know if he's in his head, if he's rushing. But man, you figure kind of similar to LaSalle where he went off. This would be a moment for Cade Tyson. And he couldn't find it. And that's tough to deal with. So there's that. Yeah, and going back to the starting, Nintendo says, I actually really like that Jay Wash started, which makes sense if you know our friend the Nintendo, but says we, all caps, need him if we want to reach our potential. And after his play against UCLA late, he earned that starting spot. As we've said all season long, Jay Wash has the highest ceiling for any of Carolina's front court players. And he's got to keep fighting and pushing and finding it. The talent and capability is within him, but it's got to get there. Nintendo says, also, by the way, thoughts on Van Allen Lubin not playing a single second of the second half. I hadn't actually realized that until you said it. Yeah, literally did not step on the court. Has anybody heard anything about an injury to Van Allen Lubin? Did anybody watch Coach Davis's press conference? Obviously, I haven't watched it yet. Maybe there was something there just holding him out, precautionary, or something like that. And let me look. How much did he play in the first half? Van Allen played 7 minutes in the first half, 2 points on just 1 field goal attempt. Did have 2 blocks. Way to go, Van Allen Lubin. Yeah, that's weird. So we're gonna have to investigate that, whether it was just like we held him out, injury, effort, whatever it was. Yikes. Man, that's no good there. Well, gang, we got a lot coming up. Jeffrey Polly just hopped in and said, what is wrong with Seth? We don't know yet, Jeffrey, on specificity. I'm hoping Coach Davis will talk about it in his press conference, and then I'll be able to add that in for Monday's show, which I'm going to record right after we're done here, where we include all our usual Monday stuff. We can whip around women's basketball getting a big road victory on Sunday. We'll add all of that in as well. All we do know, Jeffrey, is that it's an upper body injury. It looked like Seth had on long sleeves on the bench. It looked like he was kind of favoring his left arm. I wonder if it was in some sort of sling or soft cast or something. So that's all I can give you right now. So ultimately, look, Carolina gets a win here. And yeah, we'll have to go back and talk about the first half in Monday's show because, yes, thankfully Carolina didn't get into one of those stereotypical deficits they've gotten into this year. But it was a lackadaisical first half. It's kind of like, yeah, blah, right? And ultimately got to halftime with the biggest lead of the game at that point, 11, and then just blew it out to start the second half, as you'd expect, right? Just further adding to the discrepancy in numbers from the first and second half. But that is this season and what we've come to know and love, maybe. So that's great. Man, you guys cannot wait to get into a whole new week. It is ACC play from here on out, starting with a game at Louisville on Wednesday, which is New Year's Day. That game is, if I remember correctly, 6 Eastern time. We will be live with Postcast right after that. Coming up on tomorrow's show, more breakdown of this game. Unfortunately, more breakdown of the bowl game, Yuck women's basketball, and all sorts of good stuff to talk about. On Tuesday's show, we're going to do New Year's resolutions for the Tar Heels and fun stuff like that. Wednesday, we'll preview Louisville and then move on throughout the week with all of that for you. All right, guys. Oh, man, it's fun to be together. Finally getting the game back. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. I did. Been traveling all over the state of Texas with my family, and it's good to be back and hit the ground running. Let's get into the thick of ACC play. I know the winter doldrums are going to be here for most of us. Thankfully, we got college basketball to get us through, baby, and it's going to be great. If you have not subscribed yet on YouTube, please make sure you do so to help us get to 10,000 YouTube subscribers in the first 3 years of the show. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord or Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, it's a great way to go even deeper with the show. The insiders get to connect with me one-on-one, as I said earlier, free access to all of my charts and stats, data, all sorts of things like that, other perks as well. Both of those links are on the show notes. Make sure you check them out and come join us. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk to you again on Monday's full show. But until then, peace.